There is a subsidiary capped profit so that our investors and employees can earn a certain fixed return. Everything else flows to the nonprofit. And the nonprofit is like in voting control, lets us make a bunch of non-standard decisions, can cancel equity, can do a whole bunch of other things.
It is December 11th, 2015. A new company posts a short letter to the internet. Our goal, it reads, is to advance digital intelligence in the way that is most likely to benefit humanity as a whole, unconstrained by a need to generate financial return. The man behind that letter is Sam Altman. And for the next decade, he will say a version of the same sentence over and over and over again, that it's a nonprofit, that it's for everyone, that he personally owns no equity in it, that he isn't doing this for the money. Today, the thing he built is valued at roughly $500 billion, and he still says he owns none of it. This is the autopsy of how a charity for all of mankind quietly became one of the most valuable private companies on Earth, and why his own board of directors, the people who knew him best, fired him for not telling the truth. This is Sam Altman's $500 billion lie. To understand the size of the gap between what was promised and what was built, you have to start at the promise. And the promise was extraordinary. OpenAI was founded as a nonprofit, not a startup, not a company with a charitable arm, a registered nonprofit research lab whose entire stated reason to exist was that artificial intelligence was too important, too dangerous to be left in the hands of people chasing a paycheck. The founders pledged $1 billion. Among them, Sam Altman. And a second name that is going to matter enormously later, Elon Musk. The pitch to the public was simple and noble. We will build this in the open. We will share our research. No shareholders will own the future of intelligence. If we succeed, the benefits flow to humanity, not to a cap table. And Altman was the perfect messenger for it. Calm, reasonable, the reassuring voice in the room telling you he was the responsible one, the one who'd actually thought about the danger. So let's do exactly that. Let's watch what was done. 4 years after that noble letter in 2019, something changed. And it changed quietly. OpenAI created a new entity. They called it a capped profit company. The structure was a Russian doll, a brand new for-profit business sitting inside the original nonprofit, controlled by it on paper. The explanation was that building advanced AI is staggeringly expensive. You need data centers. You need talent that costs millions per person. You cannot raise that kind of money as a pure charity. So they invented a hybrid. Investors could earn a return, but a capped return. Everything above the cap, they said, still belonged to humanity. That same year, Microsoft put in $1 billion. Over the next few years, that number would grow to a reported $13 billion. Here is the question the autopsy keeps returning to. When a nonprofit founded to keep AI out of the hands of profit seekers builds a for-profit engine inside itself, takes $13 billion from the largest software company on the planet, and that engine becomes the entire reason the thing has value. At what point did the mission quietly invert into its opposite? There was no single dramatic moment. No press conference where anyone said, "The experiment in altruism is finished." It happened in legal structure, in paperwork, in the slow, deliberate language of corporate reorganization, the kind of change you only notice years later when you look up, and the nonprofit is worth $500 billion and answers to its investors. And the promises kept escalating even as the structure quietly hardened. In 2018, OpenAI published a formal charter. Read the language. Our primary fiduciary duty, it says, is to humanity, not to investors, not to Microsoft, to humanity. They wrote that down. They put their names to it. The charter promised that the benefits of artificial general intelligence would be broadly distributed. But watch what happened to the actual research. The breakthroughs the nonprofit produced, the very models the public was told belonged to everyone, were licensed on an exclusive basis to Microsoft. The thing built for humanity became a product you rent from the most valuable software company in the world. That is the pattern the autopsy keeps uncovering. Every single time, the public-facing word was generous, open, shared, for everyone, for humanity. And every single time, the legal reality underneath it pointed the other direction. Capped, licensed, restructured, controlled. The words faced the public. The paperwork faced the money. Now, if all of this were just an ambitious mission drifting off course, you could call it naivety. A good idea that money bent out of shape. The story would end there. Except on November 17th, 2023, the people with the single best view inside this company did something that no critic, no rival, no journalist could do. His own board of directors fired him, and read the reason they gave. In their own published words, the board concluded that Sam Altman was not consistently candid in his communications with the board, hindering its ability to exercise its responsibilities. Strip away the corporate politeness, and that is the board of a company you co-founded telling the world, on the record, that they could not trust what you told them. Not a competitor, not Elon Musk, the directors of the nonprofit itself. What followed was the most chaotic 5 days in the history of Silicon Valley. Altman was out. Then there was talk of him going to Microsoft. Then hundreds of OpenAI employees signed a letter threatening to quit unless he came back. And it worked. Within a week, Altman was reinstated, and the board that fired him was itself largely replaced. The people who said he wasn't candid were gone. The man they accused stayed. Think about what that sequence actually established. When the watchdog and the founder collided, the watchdog lost. The very governance structure that was supposed to keep this nonprofit honest discovered it had almost no power against the man it was meant to oversee. An internal review later said the prior board acted within its rights, but cited a breakdown of trust. The official story became a communication breakdown, but the words on the record never changed. Not consistently candid. And understand why that detail is the hinge of this entire story. In a real nonprofit, the board is the boss. It exists precisely to stop one powerful person from steering a public mission toward their own ends. What November 2023 proved, in public, on a global stage, is that at OpenAI, the arrangement was upside down. The mission did not control the man. The man controlled the mission. The $500 billion question is what he chose to point it at. So let's talk about the money. Because this is where the word lie stops being about a personality and starts being about $500 billion. By 2025, OpenAI is reported to be valued near $500 billion, placing it, on paper, among the most valuable private companies that have ever existed. And the conversion that began quietly in 2019 has accelerated. OpenAI has moved to formally restructure its for-profit arm into a conventional company, the kind with real shareholders and real uncapped upside. The nonprofit, they say, will still exist. It will hold a stake. It will be, by some measures, one of the best-funded charitable organizations on Earth. That is the company's position, and it is a real argument. We are not going to pretend it isn't. But here is the line Altman has repeated for years, the one that sits at the center of this autopsy. I have no equity in OpenAI. Taken literally, that has been true. And critics, and now litigants, argue it is also the most misleading true sentence in modern business. Because equity is only one way to hold power over $500 billion. You can also hold it by being the chief executive, by being the face investors are betting on, by being the man 700 employees threatened to quit to protect. The question the autopsy raises, and it is a question, not a verdict, is whether I own nothing was ever the same thing as I have nothing to gain. A man who genuinely owned zero would have lost everything in November 2023. Instead, the structure bent around him. That is not the behavior of a charity, that is the behavior of a kingdom. And in 2026, there were reports and discussions that Altman could, in some restructured future, receive an equity stake after all, a possibility the company and Altman have at various points downplayed. Whether or not that ever happens, notice the shape of the thing. The "I own nothing" sentence was always built on a structure that could be changed, by the people he influenced, on the board he outlasted. That is what makes it a perfect sentence, true today and reversible tomorrow. Which brings us, finally, to a courtroom. Because one of the original founders never stopped being furious about all of this. Elon Musk, who helped fund the nonprofit in 2015 and then walked away, sued. Musk's lawsuit made the accusation in the bluntest possible terms. He alleged that Altman and OpenAI had taken a charity and turned it into a money machine, that he had been induced to fund a nonprofit that was always, secretly, going to enrich the people running it. In May of 2026, after years of filings, it went to trial. Altman took the stand, Greg Brockman took the stand, Musk took the stand. 3 of the most powerful men in technology, under oath, in a fight over what the original promise actually meant. And Altman's own testimony is revealing, not because it admits wrongdoing, but because of how he framed the charity. Reporting on his testimony noted that Altman described the nonprofit as having been, in effect, left for dead, that Musk had walked away, the money wasn't there, and the for-profit structure was what saved the mission from collapse. Sit with the logic of that defense for a second, because it's important to be fair to it. His argument is essentially, yes, we built the for-profit engine, but only because the pure charity version could not survive. We had to choose between a dead nonprofit and a living company. We chose to live. And maybe that is true. Maybe the conversion really was the only way to keep the lights on. But notice that this is a completely different speech from the one the world was sold in 2015. In 2015, the structure was the whole point. The nonprofit was the promise. By 2026, the nonprofit is described as something that had to be rescued by abandoning its own design. The mission didn't fail. The mission got redefined as whatever the company became, and here is where the autopsy has to be honest with you. Because honesty is the entire point of this channel. Musk lost. An advisory jury concluded that Musk had waited too long to bring his case, that the clock had run out, and the judge, Yvonne Gonzalez-Rogers, adopted that finding. Altman was not found liable. He did not lose this case. Legally, he walked out the winner. Read that verdict carefully, though. The jury did not rule that the mission was honored. They did not find that the promise of 2015 was kept. They found that Musk should have complained sooner. The case was dismissed on timing, not on truth. The underlying question, did a charity get converted into a $500 billion enterprise, was never answered in Altman's favor. It was simply ruled too old to ask in that courtroom. And the legal pressure did not end there. Weeks later, in June of 2026, the Florida Attorney General filed suit against OpenAI and against Altman personally, alleging, among other things, that the company concealed risks of its product from users. OpenAI has disputed these claims. They are allegations. They are unproven. But they are also a sign that the questions around this man are not closing. They are multiplying. So let's lay the body on the table and call the cause of death. What is proven on the public record is this. A nonprofit founded to keep AI free of the profit motive built a for-profit engine inside itself, took $13 billion from Microsoft, exclusively licensed its For Humanity research to that same company, and is now valued near $500 billion. That is documented. His own board, in their own published words, said he was not consistently candid. Then that board was replaced and he was not. That is documented. What is alleged by Elon Musk, by the Florida Attorney General, is that this was not drift, but design. Those are claims. A court has not upheld them. On the Musk case, a court explicitly did not. And what is open, the part no jury settled, is the simplest, oldest question there is. When a man spends 10 years promising he is doing it for humanity and not for himself, and the thing he built becomes one of the most valuable companies on the planet under his control, do you believe the promise? Or do you believe the $500 billion? He told you he had no equity. That was true. He let you assume it meant he had nothing to gain. That, the gap between the literally true sentence and the thing you were meant to believe, is where the lie lives. Not in a single statement a lawyer could pin down. In the distance between the charter and the cap table. The nonprofit was the story, the $500 billion is the fact, and the man at the center of both still says with a perfectly straight face that he's just the responsible one in the room. You decide which one to believe. We just read the paperwork. If you want the next autopsy, the next self-made story that doesn't survive its own documents, subscribe. The myths are bigger than you think, and every single one of them has a receipt.